Welcome to Dive Beyond Sport. Louise Bloor, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you very much.
We just want to start this off, just hearing in your words, your quick elevator life story that's what took you to this point in life. How do you sum that up?
Oh, elevated.
Elevator.
Elevator. I'll take elevated. My life story. Entered into sport in the world of track and field. Was a long jumper, became a sprinter, dreamed of the GB vest. Got the vest, wanted more, as always. So you keep aspiring to the Europeans, the Commonwealths, the Worlds. Very blessed to get the opportunity in the 4x1 relay with that. But in the background, you're always planning for there's going to be a second phase of life and you have to eventually transition out. So, I was never lucky enough to be funded. I think I got funded for 1 year, maybe at 29, probably the oldest athlete to ever get funding. But yeah, in the background, I was studying sports nutrition. I graduated in 2012. Got my first job with British Diving in 2014, but I didn't retire from athletics until 2017. So juggling lots of work and training and probably lack of rest and recovery was definitely my performance lifestyle, I think. And now I've been 12 years, I think, maybe down the line as a performance nutritionist now. I had some incredible jobs along the way.
Amazing. I mean, as a bit of context, as a bit of context, for the people listening, Freddie and I both know Louise from years gone by. Obviously, as you mentioned, working with British Diving as a nutritionist, and it always took me a while to realize that you were actually an athlete, because you were so locked in to the performance nutrition thing, and supporting the team and everything. It took some time for me to figure out that you were an athlete, but you did a phenomenal job clearly of balancing two extremely intense things. I'm not sure there's many people that work in performance sport but also are a performance athlete at the same time. That's a remarkable thing. But just to kind of go into why that ended up being so late for you and your journey into athletics, the Born to Win program opportunity.
You're bringing that up?
I'd love to hear about it, because I don't know anything about it. I don't know anything about it, and that's I googled Born to Win, Louise, and I've seen this little article of Born to Win. I'm kind of reading some of your quotes. One of your quotes was, "Now I've won, maybe I can retire already."
Well, retiring from what? Track and field? I probably should have retired then. That was probably my peak.
But I think
I've won anything since.
But those kind of things are roots into sport at a later age than many people would kind of get into sport. And I just find it quite interesting, because in our sport, obviously, we get picked from a very young age. I started diving at 9. Freddie, I can't remember how old you were when you started.
7, 8.
Yeah, so super young. It's a sport where you have to learn the technique, movement, skills over a long period of time. If you were to get into diving via one of these programs, it would be almost impossible to get any level of super high level success, because it's just simply too late. Whereas you were able to achieve that through this program. Could you tell us a little bit more about that experience and how it kind of changed you as a person?
Yeah, I mean, Born to Win, I think first of all, in diving, gymnastics, those kind of acrobatic sports, you do specialize very, very young. I think a lot of people at that age group are still going through the sampling years of playing different sports and trying to establish which direction they want to go in. Whereas you guys, it's like you say, you struggle to do that. A lot of people do have to specialize quite early if you want to succeed. And maybe that landscape is shifting a little bit. We do see athletes compete older in the same kind of sports. But yeah, I was always into sport, and I played all sorts. I'd always kind of do a bit of football. I was never good at football. I was just fast. I got to the ball first. Couldn't really kick it well, but I got there first. And then I'd go over to track and field. And I think it was probably the year 2000s that I chose track and fields. And I know that because they had this thing called the Millennium Games. I was doing football and athletics, and I chose athletics. And that was the turning point for me when I was probably about 14, 15, which might be the typical age that most people would start to specialize in the sport. But still not training very seriously. Born to Win came along when I started to train down at Don Valley Stadium, or what was Don Valley Stadium has now been knocked down. But I know, at times. It was my childhood. And there was a poster on the wall, and it just, I mean, I'm not even gonna lie to you guys. I've always had the urge to kind of get on a plane. Like I say, I'm so envious of Freddie because I've always had this urge just to go and see the world. And the poster was the final is in Austria. I was like, brilliant, I'm going to Austria. That was it for me. That was the drive for me. I want to go and compete in Austria. And that was it. I want to see the world. And so I entered the competition, and I didn't enter it to win. I didn't enter it with the expectation of making it to the final 10 to Austria, to be honest. But I did end up going to Austria. And when we were going through the rounds, I don't think I was the favourite to win. There's definitely another girl called Sam who was just outstanding at everything, and her engine was just so much bigger and better than mine. But the final events did seem to come back around to a bit more of a power advantage. So yeah, I ended up winning Born to Win at, what was it, 17, 18, I think. And it was kind of not really the start into athletics, but it was a fantastic experience. Grueling competitions, but fantastic experience.
But I mean, that must have been that's really interesting. I'm glad we got into that a little bit more, because obviously one of our big pillars is identity. That's one thing we talk about a lot in this podcast. And so, I mean, you've gone out on a bit of a win, but you've ended up winning this thing that is obviously, that's a big suggestion that you're then going to be, successful in sport. Yeah. And obviously what you're talking about with football, like clearly there's a strong match between you and sport. And so then, but also you then had a lot of injury troubles, right? At an early age?
Yeah, I had injury troubles. And I think with the Born to Win thing, I came off the back of that, kind of going into a new coaching setup. And they never really told you what you're going to win. But what we did win was a £30,000 bursary. But we had to account for everything. So it wasn't like, here's your money, off you go. Yeah. It was, what are you spending it on? And obviously, 17, what do I know? And it's not like what we have now. I'd be like, brilliant. There's your psychologist. There's your performance lifestyle. There's your mentor. You would put the perfect package. Back then, it didn't really exist, and no one could really guide how to spend the money. So obviously it went to things like university, get a car, which was limited of what I could spend. And then, I just went to university and started training. But as you said, when I got to university, I went to Loughborough University, did sports science, which is always code for I don't know what to do with my life. I'm going to do sports science.
I did that. I did exactly that.
Yeah. Yeah.
I thought about
it. You made a wise choice. I didn't know what I want to do. So I thought sports science it is, allows me to keep training. And then, I got injured in the first year of university. Did I make it through the first summer? I think I made it through the first summer. But then I got a stress fracture in my back. And that kind of put everything on hold for about 18 months because it was not healing. And there was numerous relapses of opportunities of trying to come back. The depression was bad. The massive loss of identity was huge. Absolutely huge. I remember laying in bed and just waking up sometimes at 3 a.m. and just feeling like it almost feels like your soul is kind of leaving you. Like, if I'm not an athlete, who am I? Do you know what I mean? It's like, because people are starting to question, would you run again? Do you need a pin in your spine? Are you going to come back from this? And again, you're so young at 19, 20 with no mentor, no one to really support and guide you through it. I wasn't funded. And you're kind of, doctors and physios are trying to help. But honestly, one thing they never mentioned was nutrition. Nobody mentioned nutrition to help with healing. I was at university, depressed. I wasn't eating very well. And it wasn't until I went home, probably about 12 months after it happened, 18 months after it happened, whenever. And my parents put food on the table, I'd eat it. And then it healed very quickly after I moved home, and you start eating. And it did not take me probably till the age of 30, because obviously I'd gone through university, I'd worked in a school, self-funded my athletics career, graduated as a nutritionist, started at about 30, 31 years old, reflecting back on my time as an athlete, that I was like, Lou, you were probably in a state of REDS. You were probably in a state of low energy availability. You'd not got enough energy to even fuel your training before the injury happened, because you had no idea what you're doing nutritionally, and your training load have got up. You've got a new coach, training 6 days a week. And the injury would not heal. And I honestly believe that doctors would have put a pin in my vertebra had I probably not have moved home to my parents. I'm just being fed. I genuinely believe it would have got to that point before anyone would have suggested, check your nutrition. Are you giving your body enough nutrients to heal?
So you actually believe? Oh, sorry, Lou, but do you believe that if you'd have been eating properly before, maybe the injury wouldn't even have happened?
Yeah, it might not have happened. I mean, you never know. It's always tricky. And even when I work with athletes on their nutrition, when their training setup is new and their load goes up too much, it does sometimes happen. You do want to build it up gradually, and you've been there when you've come back too quick and then something's kind of gone. It was a massive change in setup that happened. And they also found an old stress fracture from my back pain that I had the year before. But I kind of managed to get through that. It was just a delay. So I got through it. But yeah, I do look back at that. I think, God, it was probably red. And I actually found some bloods from when I was 26 yesterday or the day before, just wrapped in a drawer called medical in a folder. And I opened it up. And again, these are bloods taken from a sports lab. And nobody had mentioned when I looked at them, the signs again for low energy availability are all flagging. And I was just like, I wasn't a qualified nutritionist at the time. But I just sitting there and thinking, the problem was I was on the pill. So you get a withdrawal bleed. So if you were to use your menstrual cycle as a sign of regular bleeding and health, it's inaccurate, and completely uneducated at the time, not a nutritionist, working full time, training, spreading myself really, really thin. I've now reflected back on all my time as an athlete, and there's a chance that, I'm not saying it was constantly through my 20s, but I think there's certain periods where there was massive issues with underfueling going on.
You've referenced REDS a couple of times. Could you just explain a little bit about what that is? Obviously, we've got a nutritionist in the room, so we might as well use your expertise. And I think, I think it's probably a lot of people, something that a lot of people don't actually think about. And I think it's something that I've experienced personally as well. It took a while to understand actually what it was. Because I didn't have the nutrition support either. Without giving too much away, because we know it's your job, could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, so REDS is known as a relative energy deficit in sport. It's basically a progression of what was known as the female triad. The female triad would be the relation between energy intake, bone health, and the menstrual cycle. So it's a growth on that where it incorporates both the physical implications and the mental implications, and applies to men as well. So in simple terms, it's when your energy intake isn't aligned to your energy demand, and there's a gap in fueling. And when that gap is big enough and occurs chronically over a long period of time, you can go into what's known as low energy availability, which in simple terms means you're not consuming enough food to fuel your training. So you've got enough for your resting metabolic rate, which is about 70% of your needs here to stay alive, a little bit for digestion, moving around and fidgeting, and then you need a little bit more for your training as well. And when you're not meeting those needs, it starts to downregulate, and you go into what we call, for easy terms, energy saving mode, where your body will start to downregulate hormonal function and thermoregulation, and cognitive function and mental well-being can all start to get a little bit compromised. With sleep, IBS can show signs as well. So it's a very kind of complex system that can flag and I can identify and show differently in different people. And it's unfortunately very, very common in sports, particularly with those who train a lot, and it goes unnoticed and undiagnosed quite frequently.
and all those additional bits like the cognitive side of things and IBS and all those different areas as well. Like, you know, I think they're the effects that it has, which people don't connect to nutrition.
Yeah.
Unless you know what it's all about.
Yeah, athletes will come to me quite frequently with IBS symptoms. And they'll say, I've removed gluten, I've removed lactose from my foods, and they report they're feeling much better, which is a positive thing. You don't want to dismiss it, but the reality is it could be low energy availability, it could be REDS, and it's not the glutens and the lactose that's causing problems. It's you're not consuming enough food, your body's downregulating, and it's not able to look after the lining of the gut sufficiently. So then you're starting to see those IBS issues. And there's so many signs and symptoms that you see out there with people, but they just don't know how to identify them. So it does, unfortunately, get missed. And then people cut out major food groups trying to resolve the problem.
What does that typically look like? You said gluten. So you mean people strip away too many carbs or gluten specifically, or? It
could be carbohydrates. I mean, gluten is obviously like more of your wheat-based products. It's a protein found in the wheat. So they'll remove a lot of that food and just kind of go down the gluten-free aisle. But a lot of people you do see with REDS, it is a carbohydrate issue because carbohydrates and sugars do get demonized. So they will step away from them because they feel like they can make them gain weight in the wrong way. So they might find it increases fat mass. I do get athletes that say, I avoid sugars. And I'm like, sugars are your friend. You know what I mean? Sugar's a thing you're supposed to put close to training to boost your energy levels and your cognitive function and to get the best out of the intensity of every session and to replenish afterwards. It's like they are your absolute friend. They're your gold standard for what every athlete needs. But because there's so much noise on social media, people don't really know where to find their information from. And they do kind of lose their way a little bit. And it's not always specifically carbohydrates that people will cut out, but there is a fear of carbohydrates amongst a lot of people.
Because, I mean, since we've started talking about this, these are some of the things I actually kind of wanted to bring up anyway. And so, I mean, just selfishly then, from my point right now, like since I've stopped sport, because I feel like I had the opposite problem with training, is that I felt like because I was slimmer, I had to eat loads and I ate a lot of carbs because I liked carbs. Like I loved bread and I loved rice and so that was always, I wouldn't say I was like low on protein, but it was like carbs was always massive and I was eating all the time. Like if it had been 2 or 3 hours and I hadn't eaten, I'd eat something because I had this like stress of like, I've got to get bigger. So and so I feel actually when I stopped, I kind of realized like, whoa, I think, and I'd get like jittery often really quick. And eventually I put that down to me being too reliant on carbs and sugar and those sorts of things. So like I have followed some of these like anti-sugar fads a little bit in my retirement era and particularly in stopping performing, like it's less important now. So I just wondered like what your take on that would be. And as a non-professional athlete right now.
I think it's tricky when you retire, and I think we all go through it where you're like, I'm not burning that much anymore. How do I manage my physicality? Which was, again, so connected to my identity. Do you know what I mean? This is going to change. I'm not training 6 days a week. How am I going to manage my physicality? Because I don't know what you guys did when you stopped, but I didn't do anything for 6 months. I was cooked. I didn't want to do anything.
I was exactly the same.
And it is really hard. Like my job is basically now sedentary at a desk, and I don't know how that happened. Do you know what I mean? I do not know how I ended up at a desk job, which is why I like camp life so much. I like getting out and going to camps. It's fun. And it is really, really hard, like trying to sit there and go, well, okay, now my carbohydrate demand has gone from what might have been 6 times my body mass to 2 times my body mass because I'm not doing anything. And then you try and focus, like you say, the type of carbohydrates that you're eating. And I think it is really, really hard, to be honest, to try and get that balance right and to kind of go, look, the carbs need to go down. You still want to keep your proteins nice and high to maintain that lean mass. And like you say, if you have put lots of sugars in and your sugars have gone really high and kind of crashed down again, obviously you've not utilised them during a training session. most people might be okay with that, unless you really, really, like you say, maybe you smashed a bag of Haribo, Freddie. I'm not sure what you did, but but I have sweet tooth issues as well. I'm ADHD. I got diagnosed 2 years ago, and it does link to sugars, which was a godsend, because as a nutritionist, I'd sit there going, I know what to do. Why do I find it so hard? And then on social media, you find other nutritionists have got ADHD, and all of a sudden it all makes sense. You're like, this is why I understand nutrition. I have a passion for it, can help people get it right. But sometimes with myself, I'm really on it. And other times it's just like, what is my problem? Why can't I plan a meal? You know, it's really hard. It's like that I have emergency chili con carne in the freezer all the time in batch, because I just sometimes just can't cognitively get up, go to work, come back, and then just sort myself out. And the sweet tooth is also linked to ADHD as well. And so I think that's also what makes me the nutritionist that I am, is that I've real kind of understanding and empathy for things just not being bloody perfect all the time. And they don't have to be perfect all the time. And I do think we need to be kinder to ourselves, from whether we're doing the same thing every day, whether we're transitioning out of something old into something new. Because in nutrition, you're doing 3 meals a day plus snacks. And there's nothing else out there that I think you have to do so frequently.
Yeah, that's true. It's completely, it's relentless.
It's relentless.
Yeah.
You're going to feed yourself every day. Who came up with that idea?
You know, it's really funny. I used to think when I was younger, sometimes I'd actually be like, damn, I wish like God or whoever had just sort of made food like longer burning. You know,
Yeah.
you could just, I just genuinely, I could be an athlete and I could eat like this small little thing that was like super, you know, nutrition dense, and I could just use that for like 7 days. Wouldn't that be amazing? But I've kind of, although I've gone the other way now because I love food. So I also now really, I mean, I've always enjoyed eating, but maybe even more so now. So I've kind of gone the other way. But I sort of know what you mean. And I also want, it's like decision fatigue as well. Like every time you to cook, unless everything is planned out. I think that may be one of the benefits of having a nutritionist, is you remove the decision fatigue.
Yeah.
And because that's a big thing for me as well. Like just being in a supermarket and not having a plan, it's like, woof.
I mean, I had a slightly different problem, and I'm almost over a year post-retirement now, where I had more of a loss of appetite because I wasn't training, so I wasn't eating well after I finished, rather than, you know, diving into food or feeling like I had to cut it out. I just didn't feel the need to eat much at all, because I wasn't training. But I've been using Gusto, and you know, Gusto sponsor us. That'd be great. That takes the decision fatigue out of it, right? Because you know, we pick the recipes days, weeks in advance, whatever, and then it's just set there. You get the perfect amount of food, and it's just really easy. And that's been super, super helpful for me, because otherwise I'd find it really difficult to decide when I'm in the supermarket days before what I want to eat on Thursday of that week, for example. Because first of all, I don't know how I'm going to be feeling that day. Don't know if I'm going to be bothered to cook. And if I do cook, like how much ingredients do I get? I don't want to have to be going back to the shop every single day. So like those meal prep services or kind of dinner services have been incredible for me, even post-retirement. Started to use it a little bit whilst I was still training, but post-retirement it's been amazing.
Yeah, they are brilliant, aren't they? And you know, I work with a lot of people who use them, and I use them and I drift on and off them. But like I say, just ordering double and having that batch. I'm going to order double. I've got my lunch sorted tomorrow. Just really helps people just to get that sorted. And I think coming back, Freddie, like you say, to the supermarket issue, I've started ordering online. Not to only click and collect, so I don't ask them to come to my door. I don't think I'm there yet. I understand why people do that when you've got, you know, 3 kids and you've got to walk the dog and you've got time to go to the supermarket. But I do go to click and collect, and then I have to walk inside to get all the stuff that I forgot. But click and collect for me is brilliant to go, what am I cooking this week? This is my recipe, these are my ingredients. Cool. So I'm going to make a curry, going to make my chili. And then you can put all the recipes just in your basket. and it's done. And if you are making a new recipe and you've got some random ingredient that you've never heard of, it's fantastic. 'Cause you don't need to go up and down the aisle trying to find it. Or supermarkets move stuff around all the time. Like they moved the spice and herb spice aisle in Morrison's the other day, and I was like, where is it? I haven't got patience for that. So I love sorting out a big supermarket shopping list. I've got an Alexa downstairs, so when something runs out, I scream, Alexa, put this on my shopping list. And then when it gets to like a Thursday or something, when I want to do the big shop, all goes on there. It's sorted. Someone brings it out to me, and it's brilliant.
Do you think they're the Gusto and those types of things? Do you think they're athlete ready? I've never used them, so I don't really understand, but
they are good. I think they're good because they get you cooking. So obviously you've got two types of food services. You've got the fresh produce, which is what Gusto and HelloFresh is, where they will deliver the fresh ingredients to your door, and you can actually cook with those. So it gets you cooking. It'll teach you about different flavors. I mean, you think outside the box a little bit, and can help to make you a bit more of an independent person. So if you went abroad, you could just go, oh, I learned how to make this dish and replicate. If you obviously get food prep sent to you, then it's a case of I can put it in the microwave or I can put it in the oven, and it's cooked, it's fresh. Some you can freeze, some you can't. But they're both really, really good. I think one thing I've struggled with them with athletes is the lack of carbohydrates that are in there. So you can get a lot of meals, especially with food prep companies, where they'll stick on 40, 45 grams of carbs, 50 grams of carbs at best. And it's like some of these guys that we work with, they need to be a lot higher than that. You might just get 70 to 80 for some people, which is fine. You can make up the difference. You can add your own rice, or you can put on drinks, desserts, smoothies, whatever to make it up. But that is one thing that I've always struggled with, is that they do tend to go really high protein and quite moderate carb. Not all of them now. You can find the ones that don't, or some that do bespoke macros. With our fellow friends, Food Fusion, shout out to those guys. Yes, you introduced me to those.
Nice.
They'll do bespoke macros for you, which is absolutely brilliant when you're working with high performance athletes, because you want just that peace of mind that they're getting what they need.
Yeah, that's so true, because I think maybe the size of the meals maybe suit a non-athlete, because as you say, athletes just need more of certain things. But to kind of bring this back to you a little bit, with nutrition, you've contributed to a lot of success in British sport and your own as well within athletics. How was it for you, kind of splitting your identity between being a selfish athlete, and you've mentioned not maybe recovering as well as you could do because you're always busy doing all these different things. How do you split the identity between being a selfish athlete and a selfless kind of support service person?
I was quite the stress head, to be honest, I think, beneath the scenes. It was stressful. Sometimes you were like, because you just had a dream that you wanted to chase. And there'd be some times where you just couldn't do that. There'd be times where you were like, I can't train that day because I do need to go out to see someone, and it's miles away. Because you do work in sports, there is a bonus of you're always near a gym. Nobody does not want you to train when you work in sport. So when you get down there, if you did want to do a session, as long as you had the energy, you could always do that session. And obviously, I think with nutrition as well, I did sports science and then the IOC diploma, which gave me a certificate that said I was qualified, but it didn't really give me the practitioner skills to go and practice. So it was really, really stressful, because even though I did have a mentor and I was in the system, so I wasn't like going rogue or anything in terms of my practice, you were in the deep end. You were very, very much thrown into the deep end of how to be a practitioner in performance sport, because it's still a puppy now, but it was even more a puppy 12 years ago. There's no resources out there to steal off anybody. There was nowhere online to really get anything to help explain to athletes. And the information I was given was the science. It was all carbohydrates, grams per kilogram per body weight. And the resources weren't there to make it user-friendly. Food diaries had to be done by hand, which would take absolutely hours of your time scrolling through the supermarket websites to do it, because the databases, even if they were out there, I didn't have access to it financially. So it had to be done by hand. So it was, honestly, it was really, really stressful. And I think sometimes if you did desperately try and help an athlete and maybe, I don't know, you got pushback or they clearly didn't want it, it can be quite frustrating because it's almost like I would give anything to be a full-time athlete right now. And I think that might be the places where sometimes it hurt most. It's like, I would give the world to be a full-time athlete and be on the program. And the reason why I was doing nutrition is because I wasn't a full-time athlete. I wasn't funded, and I had to get a job and I had to plan for phase 2. So it was really, really hard. And I think on the outside, like you say, it's really admirable. And I admire everybody that does do it. And on the outside, it's quite easy to look at and say, and look like you're flying. But do not be under illusion that were many days that inside I was screaming because I got a coach that wanted me to do something. You've got sports that expect a delivery. Nobody invests in nutrition full time. So you've got one sport over there that wants you over here, another sport that wants you over there on so many days. At one point, I was working for 3 different sports, one in Manchester, Leeds, London, occasionally Plymouth, and Birmingham. And I lived in Sheffield. So, it wasn't exactly compatible to high performance sport, which could also be where the injuries came from as well. But at the same time, I do feel I can be critical of my career choices that I made, not backing myself more, just lack of uncertainty. But at the same time, there's also a lot of pride in what I did and how I've got to where I am now. I think, I think to be on the long list for the Olympics as an athlete and a practitioner is quite interesting.
Oh, exactly. I mean, I'm really glad you've actually given us that perspective, because from my side and through the struggles that I've been through, I think it's really interesting hearing your thoughts, because I feel like I never did enough. I always had other interests outside of sport, and I did things for fun, but I never took anything really seriously, and I never put a strategic plan in place. And whenever, a bit like you're saying with sometimes nutrition, whenever anyone told me, the transition's hard, I kind of was just like, yeah, I'll be okay. And actually, I was effectively being lazy, I think, looking back, and not being honest with myself. So hearing getting a sense of some of your inner turmoil around the fact that you actually had both, but it was hard to then do everything as well as you wanted to. That's a really interesting point, because I've struggled so hard finding the thing, and I look back at your story, and when in preparation for this episode, and thinking like, wow. And even in your intro, Louise, when you mentioned how you didn't have funding, so you had to get a job, and then also you went home to your parents, and then they fed you, and that was kind of how this passion for nutrition started, and then because you recovered. I actually thought, in that moment, I was thinking, wow, that was like, in a way, the lack of funding was almost could be seen as a gift, because it pushed you into finding that other identity earlier, despite loving being an athlete and wanting to do that. So it's actually really interesting to have that other perspective now.
Yeah, it is. I think I was quite complacent because I was like, I'm doing nutrition, so at least I'm sorted. But it's not an easy industry to be in. It's not. Like, nobody ever invests in nutrition. It's the bottom of everybody's agenda. Yeah. I was talking to a physio the other day who was also an ex-athlete, Sophie Cook, and she tries to refer people to me who she can see that they're not healing. And she said, it's probably food. You've come to me, we've fixed you, we've managed your load, and you're still broke. You've relapsed. And nutrition is the bottom of everybody's agenda. Sports will hire 5 physios, 3 S&C coaches, 2 psychs, a lifestyle full time before then they get nutrition in 2 days a week. And that's where it sits on people's priorities, unfortunately. Whereas if you got nutrition, and that's specifically Olympic sports as well, if you got 2 nutritionists in 3 days, full time, then you can have nutritionists across all the pathway with none of this is a priority athlete, you can't talk to them, none of that going on, which I hated it. And you can teach them all around nutrition, and they can meet their energy needs, and they can be fit, they can healthy, there's less chances that they'll get injured, and they can train consistently and come through the pathway and reach their full potential. And you can use the physio as okay, yeah, you might get injured. And you can use it also as a proactive stay on the front foot of being in balance of all the, the foundational movements and control and inner strengths that you have to have as an athlete to reduce your chances of injury again. And it just feels like it's an upside down pyramid scheme that some sports adopt, if I'm going to be biased but brutally honest.
I think it's very fair honesty.